Number 1. Demon of Decay. The forest behind my house has always been my sanctuary. In my darkest times, it's as if the trees have the ability to suck up all the negativity my psyche exudes. One late summer afternoon, I was particularly despondent, so I escaped to the shade beneath the leafy canopy. Lost in thought, it took me a moment to process what my eyes were seeing. In the distance, I saw stark red amidst all the green. I thought fall must have come early for the old maple tree that lay at the heart of the woods. However, as I got closer, I saw that it was not leaves, but slivers of bloody flesh that hung from its limbs. I shuddered, unsure if they were animal or human in origin, but sickened all the same. I watched for a moment in horrid fascination as they danced in the wind. One broke free, landing at my feet, and in my macabre state of mind I saw it as a sign, the first to usher in the season of decay. My musings were interrupted by a startling sound, a harsh and otherworldly cry. I turned around to see that through the trees, a paltry 50 feet away, stood a creature straight out of my worst nightmares. The hulking form stood on 2 legs, but it was apparent from first glance that this was no person. Bits of deer, moose, bear, and fox carcasses comprised a tapestry of rotting skins that adorned the creature. It reached out towards me, not with fingers, but long skeletal digits tipped with claws. Its head resembled a deer skull, but with the antlers curled downward, framing its face as if it were rigid hair. Its eye sockets were empty save for a bottomless blackness, but I could sense it looking at me. It moved forward on silent gliding feet, lifting its arms as if it wanted to embrace me. Afraid and now full of adrenaline, I ran. Stumbling and tripping over tree roots, I escaped through the maze of trees back into the safety of my yard. It was only upon reaching the back porch that I looked behind me. No matter how hard I peered into the dense vegetation, I could see no monster staring back at me. And yet its presence lingered with me. Sleep eluded me that night, so I lie awake thinking of the creature. The more I thought of the beast, the more I felt that we had already been acquainted. Was the creature naught but of my imagination? A thing summoned up by my maniacal reveries? Or was it something more, something tangible? I was too afraid to step foot back into the woods. But an answer came with the decline of autumn. As I raked leaves in my yard, my eye snagged on an out-of-place object. I brushed aside a few leaves to discover a neat sliver of flesh, stark red against all the yellows and greens of the fallen foliage. Number 2. Diary from a Black Hole. I sit here now writing a diary that I swore up and down I wouldn't stoop to writing, because the events of the last several hours have changed everything for me. I am a convicted murderer. My crime, I am told, is as despicable as they come. I killed a child in cold blood. For no reason beyond that it would amuse me to do so. For that I was sentenced to death by lethal injection. Of course, I used my legal counsel to appeal the verdict, even though I knew I wouldn't win. The goal was simply to extend my life, and it was successful. In the day before I rode the lightning, as they used to say, back when old Sparky was still in use, I was contacted by the government. They'd detected a black hole closer to our solar system than was ever previously imagined, and wanted to send a human being out there to orbit the hole, presumably to observe the effects it would have on the human mind. Naturally, they decided to scrape the bottom of society's barrel for that, and apparently that's me. The choice was pretty straightforward. Go into stasis for 10 years on the way out, orbit it for 3 months, then 10 more years of sleep on the way back, and I was free. But I didn't understand what would happen to my mind out here. I've been here for about a month now, and up until yesterday everything was easy going. Yesterday, as I sat here observing the hole through the ship's front porthole, I began to feel panic welling up inside of me. Real panic, beyond anything I've ever felt. I've always been a cool, collected individual, and my conscience has never bothered me. But the more I stared into the black nothingness, the more I felt a presence. A real human presence on the ship with me. And soon I realized exactly who I was feeling. It was him. It was the boy. I felt him there, as sure as the day I saw him and decided to take his life. I could feel his gaze burning into the back of my skull, and I was too terrified to turn around and face him. But the more I stared into the blackness in front of me, the stronger I felt his presence behind me. I still have not worked up the guts to turn around and look behind me. I've been sitting here for hours gazing straight ahead, and now I know for sure he is really there and not just in my mind. As I begin to write this, I have felt him draw closer to me, and just now as I type these words, I can barely make out the reflection of his face in the glass in front of me. God, if you're there, save me. I am truly sorry for what I've done. Number 3. A warning about silence. Everyone, regardless of their particular state of mind, has a curious kind of background noise in their minds. When that noise takes the form of original music, we call it a genius. When it sounds like voices, we tend to call it schizophrenia. A single voice is often referred to as religion. Most people go through their entire lives without ever being consciously aware of an omnipresent phenomenon, save for in those rare moments when it catches their attention. Perhaps they think they've heard their name being called, or that they've been listening to the air rushing through the vents in their house. One way or another, though, the noise is there. You can hear it if you listen for it. Lie down in a quiet room and focus on clearing your mind. Mute your internal monologue. Erase the scenes from your imagination and let yourself sink into the silence. Before long, the whispers of that hidden soundtrack will become evident, then grow louder as you learn to recognize them. It could be that you'll find answers to questions you didn't even know you were asking, or perhaps discover a sense of inner peace that had been lacking in your life. Some folks refer to this as meditation, even if they're mistaken about what's really going on. The truth, you see, is much less comforting. If you've ever gone walking in the woods, you've likely encountered a cacophony of noises. The songs of birds, the chirping of insects, and the quiet rustling of small animals rushing through the undergrowth become so commonplace that our minds tend to tune them out. What we notice, though, is what happens when a predator draws near. The chorus abruptly stops. The forest becomes deathly still. A person walking amidst that sound might feel the hairs on the back of their neck start to rise, and notice their heart pounding with a mixture of adrenaline and dread. When you listen to the sounds in your mind, it doesn't matter what form they take. What matters is that you can hear them at all. As long as the clamor is present, you know that you're safe. All is well, even in the most tumultuous times. The danger arises when the noise seems to stop, when you suddenly experience the most potent silence that you have ever encountered. In that moment, you may start to feel as though you were being watched. After all, in that still forest, the predator is the quietest of all. Try it yourself if you'd like. When next you are completely alone, imagine you are listening to sound of some kind. When that sound seems to stop, you'll know that you've been noticed. Number 4, mist. My eyes open, dark, damp, quiet, drip. Deep breaths, it's only a dream. Nothing has hurt you before, so why start now? I thought to myself, you know how this plays out. Just finish the dream and you can wake up, drip. I got up and started walking. It didn't matter what direction I chose. I always came upon it. Drip, drip. There it was. Back turned to me like always, crouched over something. I couldn't quite see. Vapor rolling off of it like morning fog rolls off a pond. It had thin arms and legs, black skin pulled taut over its spine and ribs. It looked so solid, but I knew it wasn't. Drip. Just make a noise. Start this so you can wake up, the logical side of my mind said. But what if this time is different? What if it finally hurts me? The scared side said. Drip. I stood there for some time deciding what to do. The logical side won, as always. I prepared myself by turning around and getting ready to run. I knew once I made a noise, the fear would take control and I would sprint as far and as fast away from the thing as I could. Drip. My shoe tapped. The sound was deafening compared to the utter silence I was surrounded by previously. It had barely started to move before I dashed away. I ran for as long as I could without looking back, but the curiosity took over as it always does. Drip. It was fouling, moving fast, faster than me. But while I was running as fast as I possibly could, it was obviously holding back. Drip. I ran behind the wall in my dream, hoping it would block it. It passed through the wall without slowing. I willed fires around it, but they just splurted and died in its presence. Drip. It was done playing. In a flash, it was on top of me, its face inches from mine. Its face consisted of only 2 large oval eyes, 2 smaller ovals in the place of its nose, 13 ovals arranged in a slight smile for a mouth. All of them were pure white over a black head. Drip. I knew I'd wake up in a few moments. 3, 2, thank you for being my bridge. My eyes snapped open. It had never spoken before. Its voice was horrible. A symphony of voices of people I hate all mixed into one. I rolled over to check the time and screamed. It was there. Thank you for being my bridge, it said again. I only exist because you allowed me to. I grew because you kept me hidden from everyone else. I escaped because I am bored of you. It dissolved, I finally understood. The thing was a demon, but I understood something else too. Demons don't come from hell beneath us. They come from within us. We all have them, and when they get bored,